Today I would like to talk about an operation Israel launched in Gaza called Operation Protective Edge. Now, if you're unaware, Israel had three teenagers who were hitchhiking, I believe in the West Bank, kidnapped and murdered by what the government of Israel claims to be Hamas. This seems likely but unsure, so we should call that allegedly kidnapped by Hamas. When their bodies were found a day later, a completely innocent and unrelated teenager from Gaza was kidnapped and burned alive during Ramadan, which is very important. A fact that's not often mentioned is it's the holy month. And for the corpse of this young man to be desecrated as it was, and then when it was handed over to the father, be done so in public by taking his body wrapped up in what looked like a relatively cheap bag and handed to him, and then his corpse was put in the back of a Palestinian ambulance driven to Palestine, where an angry mob stopped the vehicle, broke the glass, and took his body out, draped it in a Palestinian flag, and paraded it down the street to the mosque as he was a martyr of the cause. Now, this is a point where the discussion surrounding the situation starts to sort of come off the rails a bit. This is a point where it should digress from Palestine versus Israel as if this is a traditional conflict. It's not even the family of the murdered child versus the murderers and their families. This is extremists claiming the flag of Palestine, hiding behind this innocent child, and engaging in a volley of rockets into Israel. Hamas claims that their rockets that they've begun to volley in Israel at Bethlehem, at Tel Aviv, are at military sites. Now, a lot of that has been substantiated based on their trajectory. It seems likely there have been Navy ports. There have been things of this nature. Of course, CNN has video. Wolf Blitzer is in Israel, and he has first-person video of, look, this hit a gas station in a civilian area, in a residential neighborhood. No one died, but that was dangerous. It exploded. It was a massive fire. This was a civilian target, which is a war crime. To be fair, Israel is targeting Hamas targets. What that means is they will send a warning shot, which is a sort of non-explosive projectile that hits the target. A minute later, they will launch their explosive ordinances, usually missiles, in an airstrike sort of fashion to hit the target. The problem is, this is Gaza. It's the most dense area in the world. So when you hit a Hamas target, you're hitting civilians. It is not those civilians' fault that this terrorist organization, Hamas, is hiding within them. And that claim of hiding is interesting because if they made an attempt to not hide in Gaza, there would be no difference. With the amount of airstrikes Israel is deploying in different locations, if civilians hear that first warning shot and leave their homes, leave their historic land that their families have lived in for a long time, for it to be destroyed by this Israeli aggression, they'll be going somewhere that they're not guaranteed is safe. They could go hide in a public market, and guess what? There could be an airstrike there. They could have missed a warning shot. There could be an errant strike. There is a real danger here to everyone. And my issue with it is the mentality behind it all. If Israel wants to protect themselves, sure, they're at danger at all times from so many different directions. Well, it's Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, ISIL, Syria, whoever hates them. I mean, hell, Russia. Russia hates them, as you can see with their partnership with Iran, and therefore Hezbollah. They're at so much danger that I do not begrudge them in protecting themselves and their civilians. In the same breath, Hamas, in many ways, is a creation of the Israeli attitude. As the Palestinians see it, their holy land, their ancestral home, was taken away from them by the United Nations and with the creation of the State of Israel. And then 1967 was further taken from them in military conflicts where Israel was armed by the West. After being pushed around and slaughtered for so many years, you can't blame them for trusting in a terrible force. That's what people do when they're desperate. If you don't think that's logical, go open a German history textbook. You'll get the point. The Treaty of Versailles made them pretty desperate. And I feel that's what's at play here. Now, what can be done about this? The United Nations called for a ceasefire today. That's important, because if you take a ceasefire, if both sides appreciate this accord and truly take a ceasefire and take the time to think this out and maybe come and sit and discuss this, Hamas and large numbers of Palestine will not accept a two-state solution. They want the state of Palestine. Israel wants to be respected as a nation and be safe. The issue here is simple. These two goals are mutually exclusive. Both cannot exist at the same time because of their now resistance to a two-state solution. This being the case, we have to look at the mentality of both sides and how to create a situation where these two sides can coexist under new goals, under new circumstances. And I believe the issue is the mentality of the leadership. You have a government in Israel, and you have a pseudo-government in Hamas, who is both a government, a political organization, Islamic militants, who have been called terrorists. The issue here is the mentality of these groups. One is armed by the United States and other Western powers in Israel. They have the firepower of a full-fledged military. They are under the guise of protecting themselves. When they have someone that dies, they send police force in. When Israel, the Jewish occupiers, as they are called, send Israeli police forces into Palestine during Ramadan, that makes people uncomfortable. Now Hamas comes in, and it's in their best interest to push Israel to the point that they start attacking, because when Palestinians are being slaughtered, they look, and the only ones taking up arms are Hamas. These situations benefit them. Israel has a vested interest in decreasing the popularity of Hamas. Yet, they seem very set on this idea of protect our civilians at all cost, which is the issue here. That at all cost factor negates all the good Israel is attempting to do. Now, in the United States right now, there is bloodshed in massive numbers in the city of Chicago, which is a product of gang violence. Back in the day, there was one large gang, but that gang was broken up, and now there are 500 gang factions. And how the current bloodshed can end in 14 deaths and over 80 shot over one 3-day weekend is simple. In this gangbang thing, you have one of yours killed by a rival gang, one of those other 500 factions. You take 2 of theirs. That gang comes back and takes 4 of yours. But in that drive-by, there is someone from an unrelated gang to this issue injured. Now that third gang's now in here, and they take 2 of those that shot. And it starts snowballing in the cycle of retaliatory violence that gripped Chicago, New York, Detroit, and most notable, Southern California in the 80s and 90s. I bring this up because that mentality of retaliation and escalating violence is horrible when it's a bunch of street thugs running a criminal enterprise, bordering on empire at a point. When that mentality seeks over into the realm of political leadership, you have what's going on in Israel and Palestine. The United States may not be the most peaceful nation, but we seem to be forever put in as a middle ground into this. What the United States needs to do is push the ceasefire. Remind both sides that the Democrats and the Republicans in our nation are going to shut up. We are not going to blindly support either side here. The Republicans aren't going to blindly support the Jewish interests, and neither are the Democrats. Our nation has a lot of Islamophobia there, so we're obviously not going to be backing Palestine in a public stage. What we're going to do is push an agenda of de-escalation and non-violence. Remind Netanyahu of Israel and Abbas of Palestine that their issue isn't each other. Their issue is the one group that benefits from bloodshed of innocents, and that's Hamas. If the Prime Minister of Palestine, Mr. Abbas, can take it upon himself and his party to weed out the Hamas influence and both sides clamp down on Hamas, that is the first step to peace. And that's why my issue in the current conflict in Gaza is not with Palestine. It's not with Hamas. It's with Israel. They are dealing with a violent separatist group who hates them, and everybody knows they hate them. Yet their plan to find safety and protection for their civilians, let alone the Palestinians, is to do airstrikes which angers the Palestinians. Palestinians have said, both to me and reporters on television, on international airways, that they do not support Hamas, but there is no one there to protect their interests. If Israel wants safety for their people, if they honestly want that, the solution is easy. Don't give Hamas in Palestine the support it needs to thrive. The only way to do that is to sit down, lay down your arms, and get Hamas to be an enemy of Abbas. At least that's my take. What do you think about the situation in Gaza? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to check back tomorrow. Thank you for watching.